What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of Becoming the 1% podcast. My guest today is Brandon Boothe. He is the owner of PROCARE Therapy. He does some incredible work with some of the top tier athletes on the face of the earth. We're going to talk about recovery. We're going to talk about transformations. We're going to talk about the mindset of what it takes to be and stay an elite athlete. I know you guys are going to enjoy this one. I really did. It was a great talk. Ended on a really, really positive note. And for those of you out there who are trying to transform your life, really in any way, this is sort of the episode for you. Enjoy.
This episode of Becoming the 1% podcast.
Entrepreneurial.
We got some really big things coming.
You have to have the willingness.
It's an A or B.
Try and use it as a tool.
This is phenomenal.
All details make up a person.
It's what we believe in the industry.
Thanks for coming on, buddy.
Yeah, man. It's good to be here.
Forever we've been planning this.
I know.
It's been like a year. You were here probably, what, a year and a half ago?
Probably right around then, yeah.
Because that's when this was being built.
It's been right around then, yeah.
How's everything been?
It's been great, man. Yeah. It's been great. Just cruising with the business and traveling a little bit, working on guys, and just continuing to grow this thing out.
Yeah, I always like at the beginnings of all of these to give the guests the opportunity for introduction, talking about your experience early on in the industry. For those who don't know, your basic. How would you describe yourself, first of all, your official title?
I mean, I am a chiro. I'm a chiro. I when I started all this, I kind of my goal was to position myself in kind of the sports world, so more kind of sports medicine. So I kind of would refer to myself as a sports chiropractor, right?
But it's active relief therapy.
Yeah,
it's a lot of stuff.
It's kind of transitioned over the years. You figure out, how things work, how you get people better fast. And, you take the appropriate certifications. For me, a big one was active release technique. I took that early on. I knew that would position me in a good spot because athletes, being an ex-athlete myself, athletes need good, solid, soft tissue work. Yeah. Right. So, kind of started with that in mind. So sports chiropractor, but it's kind of turned in, if you ask my patients, they're like, you're not really a chiro, but I am. I want to give the profession a really good name in that regards, because you get various types of ideas of what a chiro is, because there's so many different, types out there. Yeah. But for me, it was like sports medicine. If you ask my patients, they're like, you're not really a chiropractor. I'm like, I am a chiropractor. I just work more of like the sports medicine basis.
Do you find that being an ex-athlete positioned you in a way to better understand the trials and tribulations of the current athletes that you work with?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a huge advantage, because you understand kind of what, I never played professionally. I had the size, I had, the talent, I believe, at the time.
How big were you when you played?
I was 6'8". Yeah, I was 6'8". I played basketball and baseball. Most people think I played football.
That's what I would. You played baseball.
I was recruited. Really? I was recruited for basketball and baseball in college.
Wow.
Kind of last minute chose to pitch in college. 6'8" pitcher.
It's great.
Nobody would ever guess that, right? They're like, what? Where did you play football? I'm like, I didn't play football.
Because it's not just that you're 6'8". You're 6'8". You're the hefty 6'8".
Yeah, I'm a solid, broad-shouldered 6'8". So
you're halfway to the plate on the stretch.
Yeah.
That's great.
Exactly.
It's exactly the way. That's so funny that you use that description. That's the way Randy Johnson used to look when he would pitch. He'd be like, by the time that guy unwinds, it's almost like he's falling and the ball is like 6 or 7 feet closer to the person who's about to hit it.
Exactly.
Do you find that your height actually provided an advantage for the position of pitching?
So going back to that, well, I think going back to your original question about kind of what I do and how I do it, I do believe my size, having the experience as an athlete, really kind of positioned me in a good spot going into what I'm doing, which is I've got leverage, I've got strength. You add that with the knowledge of, clinical knowledge, which to me is the most important thing, right? When you go and see a practitioner, you just mentioned you're going to do that stuff for what you've been experiencing right now. Yeah. It's I feel like that's being lost in medicine in general is the ability to clinically diagnose effectively. So you add my size, my strength with clinical skills, you're invested in the people coming to see you, whether it's an everyday, active person or it's, an elite level athlete. You want to get them better and you want to get them better fast and you're passionate about it, right? So it's adding my experience with as an athlete and then my size and everything. I think it really has lent to me being able to establish what I have.
Mm-hmm.
So
100%. And I've watched your work for quite a while, so I think I could speak to this. Your size
Yeah.
has also allowed you the opportunity to expand the bandwidth of possible clients you can work with.
Yeah.
A guy like Shaquille O'Neal
Yeah.
cannot work with a therapist that is my size. At least he could not work as efficiently with one that is my size. Much better suited for somebody who is your size and strength.
Yeah.
When did you first learn that you could utilize that and get a demographic of high performance athletes that could go to you and get an experience unlike anything else?
Well, gosh, I going back to talking about when I started my business, right? Like we came up with the name PROCARE. I mean, obviously in my mind, I was like, I'm going to work on pro athletes. I knew it. Right. And for whatever reason, I'm not 100% sure. I was just confident. You never know which direction it's going to go.
Sure.
Right. But you manifest it. Right. And so it's funny because my wife actually came up with that name. She came up with the name PROCARE.
Good for her. That's
I
awesome.
mean, I'll give her 100% credit on that.
Yeah.
Right. But I had that belief from the beginning. And then, early on, I had a Hall of Famer, James Harrison, come in and see me. And then, it happened through a referral from a naturopath that he had been working with. My good friend, Ben Brown, who's a really good trainer, nutritionist, was training her. And that's kind of how it started. I was working out of a gym at the time.
Which gym?
It's funny you asked me that and I'm going to forget it right now.
It wasn't Ian Danny's.
No.
Just because that's where
it was just it was a regular, the gym doesn't exist anymore, but it was it was a gym, regular, people went and trained and I just had a room probably about the size of this, maybe a little bit bigger, but right around here, 10 by 10.
Yeah. Hopefully taller, just because you almost hit the ceiling when you walked in.
It was taller. It was taller for sure. But, James came in and then through that, it just kind of, it's a small niche, right? Like in this industry, it's hard to get in. I always tell people it's hard to get in it. It's harder to stay in it. 100%. Right. And so, you have to be really dialed in and firing on all cylinders to stay in it. And it grew naturally and, athletes talk about it and you get results and that's just kind of how it ends up. But
working with professional athletes, does it involve any travel on your end?
Yeah. So after about year 1 or 2, as things started to pick up, guys started to ask, will you fly out to work on me? Which I was like, me? Like what, why would you want me to fly out to? You've got access to all these, professional athletes have access to all different types of practitioners, right? I mean, acupuncturist, chiro, PT, manual therapist, soft tissue, right? And so, you going back is, you gain that level of trust, which I think is obviously the biggest thing with these athletes. And, so it took me a while to really kind of just fit into that and understand like this is a possibility and I'm going to be flying around. So I've bounced around to all sorts of different places around the country. It's not as much since COVID, but fly in, work on a guy for a day or 2, maybe 3, and I thrive on that. Like I want to come in, I want to see an injury. I want to fix you so you're on the field on Sunday. And that's my mentality, right? That's a mentality that you can't really teach, right? As a practitioner, I want to get you better yesterday, right? And so when I come in and work on a guy or a girl, right? It's a matter of me saying, okay, can I get them to, let's say they're because every athlete, especially in the NFL, every athlete, by the time you're, week 2 into the season, you're dealing with
An injury.
something, right?
Yeah.
And so
Week 2.
so can I
It's
take
pretty
this,
early.
can I take this athlete from like 60% to 85%? Because these are the elite of the elite, right? So the goal is always just trying to optimize that. And so, yes, I have flown, I have traveled, it's been great. It's awesome.
And
okay.
sorry, Jake, 1 second. In those 3 days that you're actually traveling and working with the athlete, how long are each of those sessions that you're doing, and how frequent are you meeting with them?
Yeah, they have accessibility to me all day. So it could be multiple sessions a day. It could be a session where you're spending an hour and a half, 2 hours. But it varies per athlete, right? So it just kind of, but if you're flying me out there and you're paying me to fly out there, you have my full attention, so it's, it ranges.
The mindset of fix it yesterday is, I think, something that a lot of times therapists don't have for several reasons. And one of them being, it's perhaps a less profitable business model if I can see you one time, walk away, and I'm fixed. I'm not going to come back. Was it ever in your mind that doing it this way would sort of redefine that stereotype? Because that is not just chiros, not just PTs, personal trainers. A lot of times that's a lot of the complaint from general population, from people who are going to see a therapist, is it feels like I'm kind of stuck seeing this person forever. And if I leave, I'm going to revert back to what I was, or I'm going to get hurt again, or you trying to fix it immediately is sort of different.
What I'm going to say to that is yes, 100%, because if you fix somebody fast, they're going to tell everybody else about you. So it's almost like people think like, well, from a business standpoint, you don't have a very good business model. To me, I have a great business model. Not only is my patient retention high, probably 90-95%, meaning the person that comes and sees me is going to come see me. If I fix something or help them with something, they're going to come see me for 5 other things, right? And they're probably going to be my patient for the extended period of time. But people are always constantly like, well, your business model really doesn't, you would think you would want to see more. And I always talk about quality over quantity, right? And to me, quality far surpasses quantity, right? And that goes a bunch of different directions, but yeah, it's amazing that if you can bring somebody in, have them trust, give them a good, solid clinical diagnosis, a legitimate treatment plan, and then stick to that and say, okay, in 3 to 5 visits, I want to see good results. If I can do it now, I'll do it now. But, and then you stick to that. There's a level of trust you establish with an individual, whether it's an everyday, an active, I work with an active population, an active person, or a college athlete, or even up to the most elite athletes. There's a level of trust that if you say, hey, this is the way we're going to do it, you follow that and you accomplish that. The thing is the business model is better than anything else, because you can kind of dictate how you do things, and you're not seeing 100 patients in a day, which to me is not really that effective anyway. So
Very, very similar to how we run things here. I want to see 10 really super motivated people that I see every single day, rather than 50 to 60 people all throughout the week, group training and so on and so forth. Far better to get, focused on one person, get them the results. And, like you said, that's a great business model, even though there's more money to be made. If you do more people, do more volume, do classes, etc., it's significantly better results if you focus in on one individual.
Exactly.
Seems as though there's a misunderstanding among the general population when it comes to high performance athletes. And that misunderstanding is that these guys just continuously perform. They've been genetically gifted. Maybe they get hurt, but probably not. In your experience, high performance athletes and injuries, how correlated are those two things?
I'm going to answer that this way, because I think this is the best way to answer that. Talent only takes you so far, right? With anything. These athletes, the athletes that are the best in the world at what they do, the level of commitment to their craft is unmatched right? When I say 0.01% of our population, these guys and girls are committing everything to what they do. And so they're
water.
sure.
Yeah, of course. Jake. Sorry, totally forgot to hand it out. Yeah.
Because of there's not really an off season for these guys, right? Like they go during the season. They, let's take an NFL guy. I mean, I think there's 17 or 18 weeks in a season now. They added a week and they probably are trying to add another week. They're dealing with these injuries from week 2 on, right? Like their level of commitment, their training is year round, right? No one sees that, right? It's like, it's the whole concept of work hard in silence, right? These guys are, when they're here training, and you've seen that probably at Ian's place, like the training there is harder than the season. It's different.
Yeah.
Right. But they're trying to just improve 1% or 0.5%, right? They're doing anything they can in their power to get to that. So I think because they don't ever really have an opportunity to heal right, the injuries happen at a higher incidence, right? I mean, they're just always overtrained. They're always, you know what I'm saying? So it's like
it's impossible to recover.
Overuse, is the issue, right?
And it's impossible to recover at the same rate with which they are performing. Well, I was, again, specifically speaking, because this could be very sports specific.
Yeah.
You could talk about, the average professional tennis player is going to have a totally different set of injuries as opposed to the average NFL player. Because we both come from a background where that was sort of present with us. And speaking to what you just addressed, the fact these guys don't really have an off season, what I saw to be true when it came to the high performance athletes, because all I saw was in their off training. I never, Ian never saw these guys in season. It was always off season. You mentioned James Harrison. He's a perfect example of this.
Yep.
The guys who came in with that same game mindset mentality for training always outperformed the others.
Yep.
Always. Would you say that's the same for recovery? Guys who take it the most seriously, guys who come to you consistently or do something consistently for their recovery, are they going to have a healthier season?
I would say in general, yes. They're preparing themselves the best way they can for the upcoming season. They're trying to heal. They're trying to recover. I would say yes. Now, does that stop, 280 pound or 330 pound D lineman from falling on your ankle and rolling it, into eversion and causing you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So there are the invariables there, but I think overall, I do believe the guys that get it are the guys that are really, they're getting it on multiple levels. And, there are guys I see weekly. There are guys I see a couple times a week. There are guys I see every other week. It just depends on the guy. I always tell athletes, figure out the best way to incorporate everything for you, right? It's not linear, right? Stretch may not work for one guy and another guy loves it or girl, right? It's chiro might not be the choice for an athlete, right? But I would say in general, all athletes, for the most part, 99% of them, the elite athletes, are going to benefit the most in their mind from soft tissue work.
Absolutely.
Musculoskeletal work, right?
Yeah.
The muscular part of that, recovery, scar tissue, adhesions, fascia. That's the stuff where that's my bread and butter. That's where I thrive. Like that's where I'm, I would say I stand out as a practitioner. You add the height, the strength, and then the knowledge of the soft tissue. That's a game changer for an elite level athlete or any athlete or anybody in general, right? That's where results come from. The combination of that.
I'm curious, with your clientele, is it usually an injury that is the reason they're coming to visit you, or do any of them come in as like just a preventative measure before an injury happens?
Both. Both for sure. I mean, every athlete that comes in and sees me is dealing with something, right? Whether it's golf, NHL, MLB, everyone's got something. So I think that there's layers to that question, but overall, everyone's dealing with something, but then there's a lot of preventative. Like, let's work on my hip mobility, right? Let's try to increase my hip mobility so that I've got more range through, a movement or swinging a bat or swinging a golf club, right? So you're just, it's small tweaks with these athletes because they're so elite. I always say, like, I'm a very small piece to what they do. They're the athlete. They're incredible at what they do. Your podcast is called Becoming the 1%. To me, they're the less than 1%. Mm-hmm. They're the most elite at what they do. And so, it's small little developments or strength training or little pieces to, like, finding little things and tweaking them. And then it's like, boom, they fly,
Absolutely.
Yep.
So you have had what I would consider to be one of the most frontline perspectives on every type of injury that probably ever occurs in a sports setting. Specifically honing in on NFL football.
Yep.
How dangerous is NFL football as a sport, and would you allow your kids to play it?
Interesting. The competitive side of me would want my kids to play it, right? If they had what it took, but watching the ins and outs of the, being in it, I call it being in the trenches, right? You just see what it's surgery after surgery, injury after injury, it's recovery, it's PT, that's a grind, man. Like, football is a very fast paced, very physical, very, just the physicality of it is insane. It just
Violence.
keeps violent, right? It keeps getting faster, quicker, so the NFL is over here trying to make changes, and it just keeps getting more and more physical. Right. So, it's a, if you can stay, if you get to the NFL is one thing, but if you can stay in the NFL and we always talk about that dog mentality. A guy gets on the field and can really, like, exceed for 10 years or 8 years, or, for me, if you make it, what's the league, the maximum usually somebody makes it in the NFL? I think it's a couple years, maybe.
The maximum
2 years, 2 to 3 years,
2 to 3 years. So it's a very physical sport, specifically the NFL. It's unmatched. There's nothing even close to it, right? In other sports, I think from overuse, right? Like golf, they'll have wrist injuries, hip injuries, low back injuries, mid back injuries, right? But NFL is just so, I hate to use the word violent because I know I'll get some backlash on that, but these guys are so fast. And you've seen it. You've seen these guys when they train and they run and they move. It is, I work on I started off kind of working with offensive linemen through LaCharles Bentley's space.
LaCharles is coming on next week.
Is he
or
really?
the week after? Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
You and I
awesome.
got in contact.
That's great.
Because he was with Ian at the same place at the same time when I was. He was running the O-line academy. He's an awesome dude.
But these guys, you would think like an offensive lineman, right? Like big guy, 320. These guys are 4% body fat. They move like a gazelle.
So fast.
You watch the NFL combine, they're running under, a 5. What's the speeds now? Like
they're doing under
the 40?
like 5.5.
Yeah, they're doing under 5.
5.2.
They're doing sub 5.
4.9. Yeah,
Richie
4.9.
Incognito, who I've been working on forever.
Oh, there you go.
There we
he
go.
is. What a
tank.
That guy's the man. That guy's the man.
Yeah.
One of the most misunderstood athletes I've ever worked with, to be honest with you. That guy is so athletic, the way he moves. And other guys would tell you, like, he's going to run and sprint and he's going to catch you. Because, he ran a sub, I think back in the day, he was in the league for 15, 17 years.
Yeah.
It played at a high level. He ran a sub 5.40 back then.
Oh, yeah.
That's got to be terrifying to see in your rear view mirror.
Exactly.
Oh, it's terrifying to see. I told you the story, probably the best story from my time with Ian was when Terrell Suggs was there and he was training. I think it might have been his last year playing. I was 17 at the time, maybe 18 if that. Yeah. And I was bringing like a tray of waters or something, and I went to turn and he was running his 40. And I misjudged where I was in perception to his lane, and his lane was probably where this table ends. And so I turned, and there he went. And I mean, I felt when he passed me, so much so that, again, I froze. And it's about as close as I've ever gotten hit, or the closest I've ever been to getting hit by somebody of that size. You just don't even understand that something that big can move that fast.
Yeah.
It's unheard of.
Funny story, and I'll share this. I don't think Richie would mind. And I was told this story by another athlete, Jacoby Ellsbury, who played baseball, and they all train over up at Exos up north there. And one of the interns had it in his mind to challenge Richie, like basically like they're standing in a hall, and the intern's like, "Hey man, I'm gonna be able to get by you in the hall. You can do whatever." And I kid you not, man, when Richie puts his hands on you, you feel every ounce of it. The dude is, and I think with the Bills, with a couple of his teams, maybe the Raiders too, he was, the strongest guy on the team.
I'm sure.
And so this guy had in his mind to challenge Richie and I'm gonna run and try to get around you, right? And Richie's like, "You don't want to do that."
Yeah.
And so Jacoby's telling me this story, right? And so he said, Jacoby's standing there watching, and he said, this guy literally tried to run, tried to juke him, and Richie just flicked him, flung him across. I mean, literally said it was like a fly. He hit the wall so hard, and he's just kind of flicked him,
Uh-huh.
And so I think that what people don't understand is how strong, how athletic these guys are.
Yeah.
I mean, they are freaks in every description of the word, right?
As big as you are in a setting like Exos, in a setting like PEP, you get around those guys and you are not considered big.
No.
That's what's so odd and strange about being in that world. And in the beginning, again, when I started, I was 17. It was such a culture shock for me because you also, in order to be around that many large people in one setting, that doesn't happen anywhere but an NFL training facility. Just because you don't get that many big people. It's exactly. It gives you a new appreciation for exactly how hard it is to be that fraction of 1% that you were talking about. Yep. To get to that point, forget being large and strong. That's everybody. Anybody who made it to college ball is large and strong. But being able to get to the NFL, what would you say, if anything, beyond just physicality? Is there maybe a mental X factor? And I know, again, the concept of violence is not one that you always want to associate with the NFL, but it does seem that there is a reason James Harrison was as successful as he was. There is a mental side to professional football that separates the guy who gets in and stays in the league from the guy who stops at college ball.
Yeah.
How much of that is mental and what is it?
You know what I call that? I always say, the whole 1% thing. I always say, guys, and athletes, elite athletes in general, they have what I would call the it factor, right? You can't really put a finger on it, but if you're around these athletes enough, there's just something there that makes them different. That they can, that they can go onto the field and become this absolute savage, right? This beast. And so it is, it's truly, there's something, and I haven't been able to really put a thumb on it, but there is a factor there that's different. And what I would say is a lot of it's probably intelligence, right? These guys, they're extremely intelligent. These athletes, they are, everything's calculated. Their training, their nutrition, people don't see that stuff. I've been around that. So they're very intelligent individuals. And there's something about what they can do with their brain and their mind, just kind of switching on and off. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's that it factor that separates them. Right. Mm-hmm. It makes them different. It makes them tick different. It makes them move different. And it's a level of talent, but every athlete I've worked on, I would always say, there's an it factor about these individuals. Mm-hmm. So
Tim Grover calls it the cleaner.
Yeah.
Yeah. You ever met him?
No.
Yeah, he'd be a solid guy to make a connection with if ever you get the chance, man.
Yeah, I have tons of respect for that guy.
Yeah.
MJ's the GOAT, right? I mean, he's worked with the best.
Kobe, MJ, he worked with,
all those guys.
Dwayne Wade worked with him.
D Wade.
Yeah. And he talks about that. He talks about it in a very interesting perspective as well.
Well, he would have it.
Yeah, he talks about both the positives and the negatives associated with that mindset. You know, you just mentioned the way you just said it is exactly how he does. The ability to switch it on and switch it off.
Yep.
They call it compartmentalization.
Yep.
The ability to, okay, you know, my mind is here because I'm doing this activity. Let me turn it off and turn it on. Now I'm over here. Now I'm doing something different. And that leads to both incredible success, but also a lot of difficulty. Sometimes making that transition from off to on, not so easy. Have you seen anything? I'm trying to think how to phrase this in a way, because, you know, CTE, PTSD, the inability to go from that game set mindset toward civilian life before and then during and then after a career, you know, goes its full term. Have you seen or know of any cases where that has been difficult for guys to go from professional life to that of a civilian?
Well, the way I would answer that question is, you know, imagine your entire life from the time you're, you know, 6 or 7, you know, of being, let's take football or, you know, any sport in general, right? And you play that and you're, you know, you're taught and you show up to practice and that's your life. That's your daily, that's what you do, right? And you follow that all the way through. You're fortunate enough to get recruited into a Division I powerhouse, right? And again, there everything is laid out for you. And then you go into let's say the NFL or the NBA or the NHL, and you know, all of a sudden you have, you know, everything is coming together and paying off. But if you're lucky enough to play past 2 or 3 years, which, you know, we know the average is under that, right? Mm-hmm. And you make a career out of, let's say, football, right? Imagine when that ends, right? Mm-hmm. It's your identity. It's what you know. It's showing up to train. It's so I would say, you know, it's pretty cool right now in my career because I've got guys that like a Richie or some of these other guys that are kind of phasing out of their careers, right? Mm-hmm. They've been in for 10 years, 9 years, 11 years. It varies. But just imagine trying to get readjusted into not having that identity anymore. Mm-hmm. Right. So I always, you know, I love, you know, the thing is like relationships, right? You gain these relationships with these individuals. And so you work on somebody for all these years, right? So you become close and there's a level of trust, right? And so, you know, my whole thing is, you know, make sure that you're keeping yourself busy. You're finding something that you know, that you love, or that, you know, whether that's, you know, investing or whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. But make sure that you, just to keep yourself at the same, you know,
mental and physical,
the whole thing.
I find a lot of times, because I don't get pro athletes primarily that are in season or even in their current careers, but I do rub shoulders a lot of times with ex-athletes, people who used to be. Yep. That's what I call them, the used to be's. I used to be this, I used to do that. That's usually who comes and sees me. A lot of times high level athletes, as sort of what you just said, they've got everything laid out for them. Here's your training, here's your nutritionist, here's your diet, here's what we're going to do for the next 6 weeks, yada, yada, yada. Transitioning out of professional sports. Now you're in charge of your training, your diet, etc. That poses a problem for a lot of these guys who have had that not handed to them, certainly by any means, but certainly helped along the way. Do you see that as a problem? Their physical health, leaving professional sports? How many of them stay consistent with training after the sport is done?
I think it's predominant. Like it varies really to answer that question, but you know, I would say the majority kind of stay on it, and then you get those that, you know, I think feel beat up and you know, physically, mentally, and then they just kind of, you know, they go the opposite direction. But I think, you know, again, these individuals are elite and they're calculated, right? They know. I think sometimes you step away from that, whether it's mental and or physical, right? Just trying to recover, and, you know, maybe you keep eating the same way, right? That you ate when you're trying to keep on 320 pounds as an offensive line, because that was what was required of you, right? So I think it varies, but you know, it's individual, but I would say the majority, in my experience, tend to stay relatively active.
Switching gears toward a conversation much more for the general population.
Yep.
You yourself personally have gone through an incredible body transformation. Talk to that a little bit. Tell me about where you were and what you did to lose all that weight and transform yourself as a big guy already. Losing, how much did you lose?
I mean, it was like 150 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Wow. That's
I was curious. I was curious if you guys were going to bring that up today. 'Cause it's been now 2021. Was it 2021? I think 2020, 2021
is when you first started.
was when I first started.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I played sports my whole life. I was never a kid that dealt with weight issues. Right. But what had happened, I was one of those guys, kind of to your point, where I had finished playing college. I got hurt, had a couple surgeries, and had kind of phased out of, just didn't want to deal with activity anymore. Right. So I kept eating the same, probably some depression, right? Not playing anymore, like just kind of feeling sorry for myself. And I had let the weight, school, family, all that stuff, right? So I remember December of 2019, I stepped on the scale and it was like it bounced between like 435 and 445.
Whoa.
And I was like,
okay. Yeah.
How did I get here? Right. I was like, how did this happen? It was almost like, and I think, I had been delusional first off. Like, it was just like, you just kind of get into that funk, if you will. Right. I was building this amazing thing. I was working on the best athletes in the world, and I was unhealthy. Right. And I remember guys like, Doc, you're all right. Like, you're breathing heavy. Cause I'm working on some big athletes. So COVID hit, and I realized really quick, COVID is affecting people that are overweight, right? That was just boom. And it was really the first time that I had kind of looked in the mirror and went, I'm overweight, because as an athlete, you have this mentality, right? It's like, whether it's, you're the best, or you can, whatever it is, like, you have that mentality. And I think that was a delusion, right? I had become the most unhealthy version of myself. And so just started, from day one, I was like, I got to change this, and I think I incorporated that athlete mentality where it's like, I got to get after this. I've got to change this, because if I don't, at the time, COVID, I was like, COVID's going to kill me, or something else is going to kill me. It probably wouldn't be COVID. It'd probably be heart disease, or I'd probably get diabetes, something like that. And so I just went to work. I said, I'm going to walk every day for 365 days this year. I'm just going to walk. I didn't know what that looked like. I was walking. My heart rate was just through the roof, walking. I'm like, dude, I'm unhealthy. Like, wow, how did how did this happen? And I did. I walked probably for 3 months, dropped some weight, probably like 40, 50, changed my diet, right? I was like, I gotta eat better, change that, cut out soda, right? Soda for me which is crazy, right? Soda. Yeah. But I cut that back and, or down, or completely quit. And then I went to work. I walked, about 3 months in, I read Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me. And that just resonated with me. Just his mindset, mentality. I'm like, you know what, man? Like, I'm gonna get back. Here I am, the worst version of myself, health-wise. I'm gonna get it back. And so I started running. I was probably 390, and I was out trying to jog and run. And I'll tell you what, man, that's a mental, having been an athlete and then trying to run at 390. But I did it. I'd run for, I don't know, 100 yards, and I'd be panting. And then you build it up, and you get to a quarter of a mile, then you walk, and then half mile, and got up to a mile, then 2 miles, then 3 miles. And then I'm running, nothing crazy, quick pace, but just a good, solid, big man jog, And in a year, I lost, I think it was like 160 pounds.
That's amazing.
And
160-pound transformation.
yeah, I was carrying around another person, didn't even know it. And I think for a long time, because I was a big dude, I felt like, because even if you talk to these athletes that are big, they're like, Doc, you were never big. But you look at pictures of me, because I guess I hit it. I hit it pretty well.
Back in the day.
You know, there we are right there.
Yeah, right?
I can tell you exactly when this was, September 2nd, 22.
Yeah. So that was kind of right after.
Right after the transformation had happened.
Yeah, pretty much. I had come in here. We had talked. I saw your place.
What was the feeling of liberation when 160 pounds is a literal human.
Yeah, it was the process, I think, more than anything, right? It was the daily process, the grind, the mentality, right? And I always say that individuals that have struggled with weight their whole life, right? They have a hard time tapping into that. I wasn't overweight when I was a kid. I was an athlete, right? But I knew what it felt like not to be overweight. And once I had committed myself to being like, hey, Brandon, you're overweight. I had, it was going through the process. I think that was the most liberating because I fixed myself physically and I helped myself mentally. And then that has transferred into every other aspect of my life, because when you're dialed, I call it dialed in, when you're dialed in and firing on all cylinders, I mean, the sky's the limit, right? You feel like I don't want to sound like you feel like you're unstoppable, but you feel very liberated, like you said, and, going back 2, 3, 4 years ago, I would have never done this.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't want to be on, in front of a camera. I got asked to do a TEDx talk in 2018. I got asked to do a TEDx talk.
Did you do it?
No.
You turned it down.
Turned it down.
Wow.
Because I knew, but I was delusional about it. Right. So it was like, it was a little bit of COVID. It was a little bit of just some self evaluation, and, but the process, I believe, is what really, kind of stacked on itself. And then by the time that year, 160 pounds, that's a huge,
that's one of the biggest transformation numbers I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
160.
Yeah.
To speak to what you just said about the process and respecting the process. It's beautifully said. First of all, I'm going to steal it. That's incredible. Patience is an element to transformations that people just don't often have.
Yeah.
And it's funny. It's like, there's a reason why that's one of the fruits of the spirit. There's a reason why that is an element to true life change, is understanding that this is not going to happen overnight. For you, how long was this whole process, start to finish? To get to the point you're at now, 160 pounds, even for you, took how long?
A year.
A year.
In a
Perfect.
year, I was 365 days. Yeah. And here's the deal too. Like, it's not, I'm not finished, obviously. Like, sure. It's continually just trying to better yourself.
But you dropped 160 in 365 days.
Yeah.
And
for the most part, I've kept it off.
Yeah.
Like I haven't, and my buddy, Ben Brown, who I told you about, who's a good friend of mine, who's, he does this nutrition training thing. He's like, Brandon, I can't keep watching you lose muscle, because I wasn't doing any strength training. Right. I had still in my mind was like, I don't want to get back in the gym. I still had that negative, association with sports and people telling you what to do and all that. And so he's like, I can't keep watching you lose muscle. Right. Because you do lose a lot of muscle when you
while you're just running and running. Yeah. When you're just doing cardio. Yeah.
And muscle weighs more than fat. So he reached out to me. He's like, hey, I'm going to throw you a little program. I want you to stick to it. And that's what got me kind of going back to the gym. And for a year I did his thing, and which really was amazing. Helped me out, got me stronger, just kind of at home.
Was it your time in high performance sports that made you a little hesitant to go back into the gym, or was it the insecurity of being at that place?
I'm at that point, I feel like I had, I gained the confidence back, but maybe a little bit now that you asked that, maybe a little bit, but, I just had a negative association with gym,
justifiably
public gyms.
So. Yeah.
Now
I have a negative association with public gyms. It also, speaking to that topic, training here and because I leapfrog from Ian's place straight to here.
Yeah.
I haven't done public gym life since college, years.
And years.
But staying aware of the fact that it's very difficult and daunting for most people
Yep.
to go in and make even a fraction of the transformation that you have made on their own in the gym. I think it speaks a lot to the gym culture. And we have more, I mean, today we have more public gyms, more access to them, more trainers, more people in the industry than we ever have before. But we have more obesity, worse diets, terrible health, record numbers on both sides of that equation. Any idea why that's happening?
It's hard. It's really hard to say. I mean, honestly, I don't know if it's just because they're general box gyms, and the idea is that, you know, I like the encouragement of training health, right? Like the gyms are great for people.
Mm-hmm.
If you can go there and stay consistent and disciplined, I think that it's the best thing anyone can do. Exercise is the best thing you can do day to day for yourself.
Amen.
Right? Every day, something.
Yeah.
If you take off Sunday, go for a walk, right? I mean, think about that. I mean, for a year, I pretty much walked and jogged.
Mm-hmm.
When I walked, walking is the most underrated exercise out there. Steps.
Sounds like Mark Bell.
It is.
He talks to this exact thing.
It's the most underrated exercise. Now you can look at it, zone 2 training, Tia talks about zone 2, zone 3 training, all that stuff. But I like the idea of a gym is a healthy place. I think where they get it wrong is that, it's a money, it's a business,
Mm-hmm.
right? But they're getting people that sign up for $10, $15, $20 a month plans,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't use it.
Right.
Right. And so people need, they need to be held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it takes a lot of discipline and consistency, as you guys know.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing.
It does. And a realistic expectation of the type of timeline you were talking about when we were talking about transformations.
Yeah.
You could not have hit the nail better on the head with 1 year. It is exactly, every time I talk to someone new, someone telling me they want to, anybody who uses the word transformation with me, that's always the timeline I point to. I tell them, like, look, I'm not going to sell you on anything. I'm going to tell you straight up. Like, if you're looking to lose this 65 pounds you want to do in order to make the Army Reserves or whatever it is, you're going to need to stay here. You're going to need to have an understanding in your head that you're not going to make any progress in under 90 days, and you're not going to make lasting progress in under a year. And that's, and every time I have that conversation, it reaffirms in my mind that people don't have the right education around this, because almost without fail, when I say that to someone, they get mad, they get disappointed. I can hear it in their voice. No one's told them that before. They're like, a year? Are you kidding me? A year? Like that's forever. I'm like, well, all right. Yeah. Looking at it right now at the outskirts of it may seem that way, but we're talking about a change in your life. Like
that's what it is.
Yeah.
A transformation is not just a year. It's a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Right. And you have to want it. Like nobody is going to tell you how to do it. Your trainer is not going to, they're going to encourage you. They're going to help you. They're going to give you the right exercises and the right nutrition and all these different things. But if you don't do it on your own and don't want it, how's it ever going to get done?
Yeah.
Right. And so you have to, it has to be greater than, your want has to be greater than your what's the word I'm looking for? You have to want it.
You have to want it more than you want the habits that have made your lifestyle what it is.
Yeah.
You got to want it more than you want the pizza, then you want the donut, then you want to chill on the couch and not go.
Yep.
You gotta
want it. You gotta want it.
Yeah. And there's a level of almost narcissism to this that you have to want it and hate the way you feel so much that you are willing to change it.
You got to take care of yourself so that you can help take care of others. Right. That was one thing I learned during this process.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like I was taking care of others and forgetting about myself. This leveled me up substantially. I'm healthier, right? Stronger, happier.
Yeah.
Right. So it's one of those things where it's like, if you can commit to yourself and really get yourself dialed in, like the sky's the limit.
And I'll say
everything gets better.
And I'll say this to you. Your clients are happier.
100%.
Your clients are getting better care.
Yeah.
If it's your kids, your kids are getting a better, more active father.
Exactly.
Everybody in your circle gets better
Exactly.
when you take care of yourself.
100%. Relationship, everything. All of it.
Absolutely.
All of it. It's amazing.
It is.
And it's not that complicated. I mean, it's like why aren't we doing that more? Why is our society getting more obese? And we there's lots of reasons why.
Yeah.
But like, it's just kind of lazy. Nobody wants to put in the work, right? Commitment, discipline, maybe self-confidence, right? Like if you've been overweight since you were younger, right? Having the self-confidence to believe that you can do what it takes day in and day out to change that. I mean, the mental side, it's that's a big part of this.
Yeah.
Big part of this, believing in yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
And having gone through something like that, anything you go through that tests your mental capacity to keep going, I think gives you a better understanding for others who are going through something similar.
Yep.
Who want to go through a transformation, who are dealing with a hardship, who are dealing with something that is testing their ability to just keep going. If you don't find that you've gone through something like that yourself, it may be hard to empathize with that person. But once you do, once you drop 160 pounds in 1 year, you have an understanding for that guy who comes to you and says, I need to drop 100 pounds. I don't know if I can. You can. I dropped 160 pounds in 1 year.
Yeah.
You can do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Give me a year and we can do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's encouraging stuff, man. Thanks again. Thanks for coming on, bro. This is really cool.
This is great.
What a cool note that this whole thing ended on. And I really appreciate everything you've done for the industry and your work. Like I said, obviously I've followed each other for a while. I love what you're doing.
Love what you're doing too, man. You guys, I mean, this place is incredible.
Thank you.
Incredible.
I appreciate that. Really do.
Unique, one of a kind.
Yeah. I think we both fit that description.
1%. 1%.
Thanks, buddy. So if someone wanted, lastly, if somebody did want to work with you and wanted to get in touch with you, where should they go?
It's funny. I still to this day don't have a website.
Good for you, man. Just going against the tide. I love it.
Instagram, I think, ProCare Sports Therapy.
ProCare underscore
ProCare
sports therapy. Yes.
Yeah. And hopefully soon, the goal is to start creating a little more content on there rather than just.
We got to talk.
Yeah, a little content. Maybe a little bit here and there on that. So some educational stuff.
Awesome. Good call.
Yeah.
Very smart. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching that episode of Becoming the 1% Podcast. If you like the content and you want to see more of it, hit the like and subscribe. Activate that notification bell as well. We really appreciate it. If you guys want to see more of it, we actually have the Becoming the 1% Instagram, and the podcast is available on Spotify. For our socials, we have Strict Vision Athletics on Instagram. We have it on YouTube, and we have it on TikTok.